them more, but at least you'll be introduced to them, and they both have to do with psychology as much as with history. The first guy is this guy. I kind of mentioned his name before. His name is Dan Sickles. Had we gone downtown today, we would have gone near the White House. Near the White House, there is a park across the street from the White House on the opposite side of Constitution Avenue, right off of Pennsylvania Avenue. It's called Lafayette Square. It's on that square that William Seward, the Secretary of State, had his home. And you remember what happened to William Seward on the night of Lincoln's assassination. He would be the one laying in bed and being stabbed about the neck and the face by Lewis Powell or Lewis Payne. Well, another incident occurred much earlier, prior to the Civil War, that would involve this man here. He was a politician from the state of New York. His name was Daniel Sickles. What is the psychology involved in this? You'll find out in just a second, but let me give you a little bit of background. On September 27, 1852, Dan Sickles married Teresa Bagioli against the wishes of both families. He was 33 and she was 15. So right there, you know, a little something, but of course that was more common back then. And although she was sophisticated for her age, speaking 5 languages, so she was, you know, 15 going on, you know, much older age, I guess. In 1853, Dan Sickles became Corporation Counsel of New York City, but resigned soon afterward to become Secretary of the U.S. Legation to London under President Franklin Pierce. He returned to America in 1855 and became a member of the New York State Assembly, blah, 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 blah. Sickles' career was replete with personal scandals. He was censured by the New York State Assembly while he was a member for escorting a known prostitute, Fanny White, into its chambers. He also reportedly took her to England, leaving his pregnant wife at home. And he presented this prostitute to Queen Victoria of England, using as her last name the last name of one of his political opponents. In 1859, in Lafayette Square that I just spoke of, across the street from the White House, Dan Sickles shot and killed the district attorney of the District of Columbia. His name was Philip Barton Key II. He was the son of Francis Scott Key, the author of The Defense of Fort McHenry that you know better as the Star-Spangled Banner. Sickles shot and killed him there in broad daylight in front of a lot of witnesses right across from the White House because Barton Key was having an affair with his young wife. Here is a picture of Barton Key. Now, in 1853, so 6 years after they got married, she was about 21 at the time, and Barton Key was probably about 40. This is a contemporary newspaper drawing that was printed of the actual murder there in broad daylight on Lafayette Square. So was Key having the affair? Key was having the affair with Sickles' wife. But how much did he love his wife? I mean, he's hanging around with prostitutes. He left her at home when she was pregnant.
To go visit a bigwig, and then, yeah, I mean, that would have been maybe her, you know, a huge thing for her, and he didn't care, he brought the prostitute instead.
Well, right after the murder, that same, you know, just moments later, Sickles will surrender at the home of the Attorney General of Maryland, a few houses or blocks away from where the murder occurred, and he confessed to the murder. Sickles was then taken to jail. He was able to receive visitors, and so many visitors came to see him in jail that he was granted the use of the head jailer's apartment to receive them. This is one of the several odd features of his confinement. He was also allowed to retain his personal weapon, his gun. The press was very, very favorable to Dan Sickles. Even President James Buchanan sent him a personal note.
Remember, this is a different time period. This is a time period when men ruled, women did not necessarily have a huge voice, and so for him to have an affair, no big deal. That just means he's a stud. For a woman to have an affair, she violated the sanctity of their marriage.
And remember, this was Victorian times, which even hit in America, and that was basically the mores of the time. That men had affairs and women were there to have bear children.
In fact, one of the things they talked about is the Victorian compromise was that outside in public you didn't show anything, no matter what happened behind the scenes.
Oh right, yeah, you were very, very prim and proper in Victorian times on the outside. But behind the scenes, that's when the fun would occur. Well, Sickles will be charged with murder. He secured several leading politicians for his defense team, including the Secretary of War during Lincoln's administration, a fellow by the name of Edwin M. Who was it? Who was the Secretary of War? Stanton. Very good. And a couple of other famous attorneys at the time. Sickles pleaded insanity. This would be the first use of temporary insanity as a defense in United States history. Before the jury, Stanton, his lawyer, argued that Sickles had been driven insane by his wife's infidelity and thus was out of his mind when he shot Key. The papers, the newspapers across the country, trumpeted that Sickles was a hero for saving all the ladies, quote unquote, from the rogue named Key. Now, Sickles' wife had given a confession of this entire affair. The judge ruled it inadmissible in court, so Sickles, through his connections, had it printed in newspapers all over the country. And basically, his wife was the one who, was saying, it's all my fault, it's all my fault. In the courtroom, the strategy brought drama, controversy, and ultimately an acquittal for Dan Sickles. Dan Sickles later on will become a major general in the United States Army. Later in his career, he goes to Spain as the United States ambassador to Spain, and he has an affair with the Queen of Spain, believe it or not. During the Battle of Gettysburg, Dan Sickles will command the 3rd Corps, so there's a connection to Gettysburg. They will be located down on Cemetery Ridge during the battle, and against orders, basically, Sickles will move his men out to a place called the Peach Orchard along the Emmitsburg Road, where his men get slaughtered. Sickles that day will be shot in the left leg. He loses his leg. While he's laying there in the battlefield, his men fighting, Sickles calmly will be puffing out a cigar as they haul him away on a stretcher. They asked him why. He said, they wanted my men to see that even though I was badly wounded, I was handling it, without any problems. Sickles, because he was wounded, was able to be transported to Washington, D.C., where he will be administered to in the hospitals there. And while he's in Washington, he's the first one from the Battle of Gettysburg to go and talk to congressmen about what happened at Gettysburg. And guess who he said was the hero of Gettysburg? Himself. And he blamed all these other officers, including General Meade, for anything bad that happened at Gettysburg, when it was actually Sickles that made one of the biggest mistakes in U.S. military history. But he had influence and power, and being the first one there, it's like when you do something wrong, the first thing you do is go tell your mother about it because you don't want your father to find out about it, right? It's almost what Sickles did. As a result, Sickles will be back in good stead in the United States, and especially amongst Congress. That's why he gets appointed to high offices after the Civil War. Dan Sickles will outlive every other general that fought at the Battle of Gettysburg. He will die in 1914. However, 20 years earlier, in 1895, Dan Sickles will, as a member of Congress, be the congressman who proposes to make Gettysburg a national military park. And the military park we have at Gettysburg now, we owe to Dan Sickles, who actually helped to preserve all that land and establish the military park and the establishment of monuments there. When somebody asks Dan Sickles, why don't you have your own monument at Gettysburg? And he doesn't have his own monument. What he does have is just a monument for his 3rd Corps. And all my papers fell, sorry. This is out, some of you may have seen it, the triangle, or not triangle, the diamond is the symbol of the 3rd Corps, but his name is not on it. When they asked him, why don't you have a monument at Gettysburg, since you were the best soldier there, and did the best thing there, and you're the one responsible for the battlefield park, Dan Sickles said, very simply, the entire battlefield is my monument. So the guy had quite an ego. Dan Sickles' leg is an interesting story. Dan Sickles' leg is right here. I took students from Hack on this very minibus to see it a couple of years ago. It's at Bethesda Naval Hospital Museum. It's also the museum that has the bullet that was taken out of Abraham Lincoln's head. That's one thing Ford's Theater does not have. So Dan Sickles, after his leg was amputated, every year he would go and visit it at Bethesda Hospital. He just couldn't, let go of his leg. That's the story of Dan Sickles. A little psychology in there? Yeah, well, at least the defense that he had for temporary insanity, but you can see also he had a couple of other issues, I would say.
How many people have taken my class? All right. I might have mentioned it to your class, I might not. How often is the insanity defense used in court cases in the United States? Anybody know? A guess? How often it's used as a defense? It's used as a defense in less than 1% of the cases of trials in the United States. Any idea how often it is successful as a defense?
Very rarely.
Less than 25% of the 1% of the cases is it successful. So just to let you know, and insanity means that at the time of the crime, you were so distraught or incapacitated that you did not understand right from wrong. That's different than competency. Competency at time of trial means, do you understand your proceedings and can you defend yourself? Because in our country, you have a right to your defense. So just to let you know, there are two different standards. You could be insane at the time of the crime, but be sane at the time of the trial, or you could be sane at the time of the trial and insane at the time of the, I don't know, I got it
the other way around.
Yeah, thank you.
We get it.
Well, it's because she's talking to me and I can't do two things at the same time. So, sorry. So, yes, insanity at the time of the crime, you did not know right from wrong.